by 666bet.com.
This is Kugan Cassius for Apple TV in association with Macklin's Gym Marbella. With me I've got promoter Frank Warren. Frank, a couple of days after the Bad Blood event, and which was ultimately a good show, but like with anything there's always certain negatives that surround stuff, so I'll get this out of the way first of all. First of all, like I said, I was there that night, and I will add that I've seen whatever was going on, or people implied were going on social media. I've seen worse of things at boxing shows. One of the things that was raised was the security element. Were you ultimately satisfied with the security as a whole on the night of Bad Blood?
No, I wasn't. I mean, let's be sort of cut to the chase with it. There was a lot of problems. There were a lot, we've only obviously you find out afterwards. There was a lot of problem with forgeries, forged tickets, which Aventum, who were the ticket agents who dealt with the tickets, they're actually investigating at the moment. There were some duplicate tickets, some printing of ticket stuff, and they're at the moment investigating this, and they will come back to us to let us know. For stuff like this, these passes, they were sold on the secondary ticket market. These are not even the passes for the show, but some guy paid $2.5 grand a piece for these on the night, showed up, tried to get them, amongst many others, and this was sold on the secondary ticket market, on one of the secondary ticket things. Again, that's being investigated at the moment, but it causes problems. It causes problems to security. Security get diverted having to deal with stuff like this. The bars at the venue should have been shut at 10 o'clock, and they left them open, and we're dealing with the venue on that. The bars should have been shut down. And one of the big problems was obviously that some people couldn't behave themselves. And you can't legislate for that. You can have security there, but then we've got the police. It's not just security, it's police as well. There was all the meetings that took place between the police, security company, the venue, the British Boxing Board of Control. Everybody was satisfied with the precautions we put in, and we went overboard. We had more security than we should have done, and we were obliged to, because obviously we were very conscious that a couple of these fights were quite could be contentious as regarding the crowd. The drinking, the bars being open that long, they shouldn't have been, and as I say, we will take that up. We've had considering how many people were in the venue, we've had it's a very small proportion of complaints, but nobody should be having to put up with anything. They pay for their ticket, they're entitled to a decent night out. One of the problems was the overrun, because they were such well-matched fights. All of them went the distance, bar the last fight. And we learnt a lesson from that. That affected obviously people travelling home, missing their trains, and it's not acceptable. That should happen. And what we're doing, and will happen in future, that the semi-event, the lead-up fight, which in that case was Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubanks, in the future that'll be on at 10 o'clock, whatever happens, and then following that will be around 11 o'clock, maybe a tolerance level of half an hour to 11:30 will be the main event, if in the future, unless we've got some serious American TV interest, which as we've had in the past, then the fight would go on in the early hours of the morning, because of we would need that revenue to make certain shows happen. So that's what will be happening in the future, and that will mean that certain fights will be pushed back if they go the distance. So, for example, say Mitchell Smith or Frankie Gavin's fight, or one of those five Frank Buglioni's will be pushed back later. Now that may still upset fans, but the guys who are going to see the main events will be able to ensure that they're safe, that their travelling arrangements won't be interfered with. So that's a lesson. That is a lesson learned. I think they had the same thing up in Liverpool, didn't they? The week before it ran on long, or for whatever reason, and we've got to ensure that the ticket buying fans and the customers, our customers, who some of them are very loyal, and they spend and part with their hard-earned cash, get looked after.
It was a 13-card deal, and you started relatively sort of early, in comparison to other shows. Is the plan, obviously moving forward, to eliminate this transport issue and people getting home, is to not put so many fights on the bill? Yeah,
I think that may be one. I mean, there's two shows in one there, and bear in mind we're trying to give some value for money to the fans. I mean, if if all the fights went short, we'd be sitting here saying there was crap fights. I mean, you know, sometimes it works against you, other times it works for you. Look, you know, in the past we've done shows like, you know, like I remember, I think Barry Hearn was saying the other week in The Sun, it was his pay-per-view show was the first 6-hour show. I mean, I don't know what planet he's been living on all these years. I remember we've done shows, for example, the Full Monty show, and we'd do shows like, you know, Naz fights in the UK, and then we went on to our American show with Tyson fighting in the States. I mean, these were quite long evenings for the television punters. But for the, as I say, the Full Monty was 10 title fights on one bill when we was on Sky. It was a long show. You know, we've done that on many occasions. But all these fights went the distance. The atmosphere was brilliant. It was, I mean, it was buzzing, wasn't it? It was electric, and there, you know, there was a lot of anticipation about the two main events, and a lot about the undercard, the other undercard fights. But you know, we can't do these 13 show fights now. We're looking at another format and a way of doing it. But we're trying to give value for money. You know, you disappoint some people, and you know, in some cases they are right to be disappointed with the, you know, that they're travelling late. But you know, it is value for money that we're trying to get out there and give to the fans and to the BoxNation subscribers.
I mean, going back to the tickets, obviously I've just seen that, and it's quite disgusting to see that those things being made and sold for that sort of money. There was also a picture circulating on Twitter of some double book tickets. Do you know anything?
Yeah, a guy actually came up to me, but it was so funny. The old acoustics in there weren't so good. And there was this guy come up to me. And he was trying to draw my attention. I didn't quite understand what he was saying. So if he's watching this, he needs to get in touch with my office. But and I didn't quite get what he, you know, where it was with it. And we spoke to the security to go and sort it out. But there was some forgeries in there. You know, I mean, some of the stuff you see, like we're printing double tickets. I mean, you know, let's get real and get, you know, I want aggravation, don't I, on the night, and having people, I mean, you know, people were rejected from their seats and thrown out some, but there wasn't a lot of it, but there was, you know, there was obviously some happens, but again, things, and they were quite good forgeries, and there was some duplication of people with Eventum duplicated some tickets because people said they lost tickets. So Eventum, the biggest ticket agency in Europe, they're quite a big organisation. It's not the secondary ticket market. You know, they're bona fide ticket agents, and they will deal with that. And once we get a copy of, or you know, get their report, we can then deal with it.
Another issue that was raised, and I know the lavatories aren't your forte, but that would seem to be a big problem, that a lot of the toilets were shut on the night. Well,
again, you know, the XL is a world-class arena. It hosted some of the Olympic sports, and certainly Olympic boxing was there. It hosts a boat show and various other exhibitions. I mean, it's a big exhibition centre. It's a modern, state-of-the-art venue. They knew how many people were going to be in the venue, and you would anticipate that the toilets were open. And again, we're waiting for the venue to come back to us on that matter. I don't know if that is the case or not. I've heard it from yourself and, you know, a couple of other people. I don't know whether that's true or not, and if it is true, it's unacceptable. But that would be down to the venue. You know, I'm not in charge of toilets. You know,
I know it's just
you're taking the piss, but, you know, I'm being quite honest. Yeah. You know, all that should be. You know, again, it's not just about me booking a venue, and you know, the venue has a responsibility. I'm not licensed for the venue. The license is with the venue and the local authorities. And when you have an event on, they will have to ensure that there are adequate toilet facilities for the amount of people who are attending an event, and that's their responsibility. And you would expect that to be the case. As of yet, I don't know. We haven't had anything back from them. We're compiling this ticket, the ticket situation, the other bits, and then obviously, you know, we'll find out, you know, get to the bottom of what actually did go wrong, with you know, which spoilt a few people's night.
So Frank, I said another issue that was on the social media. I wasn't aware of this until I read it the next morning, but there was a competition winner that was won tickets through a sponsor that was no longer sponsoring the Bad Blood card, and I think what's happened is he's come there and he's been offered by your promotional company, because the tickets weren't there, free drinks in the hospitality bar and tickets for another show. But he was sort of on Twitter, and people were on Twitter saying that his tickets had been sold or whatever. But I think,
well, first of all, if it, there's no, we're not in the business of doing that, and why would we do that? And what you've just told me is the first I've heard of it. But if that's the case, and I'll check to see if it is the case, and I'm sure if you're telling me that's what happened, then he will be my guest on the 28th of February at the O2, and he will get 2 VIP passes, and we'll put him in a hotel for the night to make up for his problems. I mean, I knew nothing about this, and if you're saying it's 666, who he's supposed to got the tickets from, then I don't know what's happened between 666 and my business, and my company, that's happened. But sometimes things do happen, and it is a disappointment for people. But I can assure you, it's not about. I don't think we're that much in financial difficulties that we need to go and sell 2 tickets and disappoint someone and be embarrassed. So that's what whoever this couple are. That's what we'll make sure happens for them.
Yeah, like I said, it was an original competition.
It's a shame, really. It's distracting from a great night.
Yeah.
It was a great night's boxing, great fights. I think it's a heavyweight fight didn't come alive as a lot of people anticipated, and certainly I anticipated it would do. But the rest of the fights, cracking fights, well matched, all went the distance. Can't get any more well matched than that. Good matchmaking, and it was it was a fabulous night's boxing. But little things happen, and that seems to be now taking over from what it was all about, which was the fighters.
All right. Well, listen, you've answered the questions and cleared up these issues, and like I said, it's still ongoing on your side anyway, so we can leave that one there. But the boxing itself, Frank, obviously, I know you kept saying that Chisora Fury was the main event, but there was the undercurrents of Billy Joe and Chris Eubank. Really,
it took over. I mean, as I said, the fight got postponed in July, and how much more can you talk? How many more press conferences you have to say the same thing that's been said for about a year leading up to the fight? And then when we made the beefed the card up with Billy Joe and Chris Jr., that became a talking point, and it was fresh, and it had it was fresh news, and obviously there was a lot being said because of the profiles of the two guys and the history between them, that it was a big grudge match and would turn into a good fight, and it certainly did turn into be a really good fight, an exciting fight, and the punters loved it. There's no doubt about that. Derek Chisora just didn't get in the fight. He had an eye problem in the second round. Irrespective of that, Tyson Fury boxed really well, switching to southpaw stance. I don't think Derek was prepared for that, and he couldn't deal with it. He wasn't getting his jab going. He couldn't get his distance when he was getting inside. When he did get inside with Tyson, his head was on his chest, and Tyson was leaning over him. He just couldn't get his work off. Tyson fought an extremely good fight. I've watched it back a couple of times on TV, and I thought that it was a much better fight than it looked in the hall. Because obviously, with Derek, and I wanted Derek to, and I thought Derek put a better performance up. I pulled him out in the 10th round because you could see it was just becoming repetitive by then. Was he going to find a big punch that was going to connect? It didn't look like it at that stage, and he was getting quite banged up. So that didn't come alive, but the rest of the fights on there did. They were good fights, and I thought it was take some of these problems that we've had, take all away. What it was about, the boxing itself, I thought was a fabulous night's boxing.
When I spoke to you a few weeks ago, you said obviously the fights and the shows dependent for next year were sort of reliant on what would happen at this Bad Blood card. So, I mean, for Derek Chisora now, he's in a bit of a funny position, isn't he?
Well, he had some good wins, didn't he?
Yeah.
Over the last couple of years, Malik Scott and a couple of guys, Kevin Johnson. They were good wins, and and Malik Scott was undefeated. No one wanted to fight him. He won them and won them well. And you look at how he fought against Tyson, and you think to yourself, Tyson Fury deserves some credit for that. The way he handled Derek much better than than anybody I've seen him in at all. Anybody he's fought. I mean, he gave Elenius a tough fight. I thought he won the fight. Derek did extremely well against Klitschko, but Tyson Fury handled it well. So he's now set himself up for some big fights. He's the mandatory to Klitschko. He's going to fight again on the 28th of February at the O2 Arena. If he's the main event, it'll be 11 o'clock at night, so there'll be no problems with the fans getting on. Billy Joe, we've got to wait to see what happens on December the 13th, the outcome of that fight. There's also down the road, there may be a rematch. And, I've not discussed that with anyone, but it's a natural rematch, isn't it? You can see that turning into a long running saga between the two of them. And then you've got Frankie Gavin's got a good win. It's not the end of the world for Bradley Skeet. Bradley's got to get himself back in the game, same as Frankie did. Frankie's now got back into contention. You've got young Mitchell Smith, who I think is going to be an absolute star. He banged his hand up in the first round. Yeah. I've got to tell you, I really, really rate him. I think he's only had 10 fights now, and I think he's going to be a little bit special. Liam Walsh got himself back in the game. You think of all the disappointments he's had over the last 2 years. Great fighter. You can see where he stays at this weight and moves up. These guys are all in contention. So we're going to have a big show in February and a big show in March. We'll split them all up. But they'll be involved in some really good, meaningful fights that will move their careers on to hopefully getting a couple of world champions.
How confident are you that either the winner of Korobov and Lee, you can get that fight for Billy Joe over here?
Well, Andy Lee, it's a no-brainer. Yep. And Bob Arum and I have agreed that Bill fights Komarov. It's just where it takes place. I don't want it going to the States. It makes more sense to do it here. Billy Joe got a tremendous reception from the fans. I was quite pleased the way, when he came into that venue, when he walked to the ring, it seemed like everybody in the place was cheering him on. So that was great stuff. And Bill, he was excited. It was an exciting fight, so I'm quite sure in a world title fight we'll get a big turnout again for him.
Absolutely, but it all depends, like I said, what happens in...
Yeah, see what happens on the 13th. It's only a couple of weeks away.
Absolutely. What is the plan for Derek now and for next year then?
Derek's got to rest up and see what his eye is and see how it is and see where he fits in the heavyweight scene. It's knocked him back. Let's be realistic about it. It's knocked him down the pecking order. He needs to get himself, if he's going to fight on, then he needs to get himself into a decent fight to get him back in there. You look at the heavyweight division. He's beaten a lot of guys in the top 10 already. He's beaten some good rated fighters and beaten him with some good rated fighters. It's can he go back to the well? Is it in there? And we'll find out in due course if once we sit down and work out where his career is going to go. This business sometimes this winner and loser thing. It's great for the winner and sometimes the loser. It's it's a tough road back. But you've seen people in the past like Danny Williams get himself back into contention. Derek's done it before. Can he do it again? Does he want to do it again? Do we want to let him do it again? There's a lot of questions to be answered there.
Obviously, Frankie Gavin at world level welterweight is in a very tough weight. How confident are you can secure him something next year?
I'm quite sure we can get something for him. I think he'll probably get a shot at the European title next. Yeah. When he gets that, wins that'd be great. We get him back in the game. And Frank, Frank's got, he's there, and he'll move him up in the rankings again. And hopefully, in the next couple of fights, we can get him up in the top three.
And Frank Buglioni in a very entertaining fight with Andrew Robinson, who was an undefeated fighter.
It was going to be a tough fight. I said that at the time. And I think I thought it was going to be a tough fight. Andrew is, he comes to fight, and it's the old thing. Styles make fights. You knew that was going to be a decent fight. And Frank had to dig deep. Showed he's got plenty of grit. He took a couple of good shots, and at the end of the day, he came through in style.
The show as a whole, though, Frank, are you satisfied? Apart from the stuff we was talking about at the start of it.
Well, to be honest, that does take a bit of the edge off it when people are talking about that rather than talking about the fights. But you can understand why. For the small group of people who had whose nights were spoilt. You know, we can only apologise for that, and can assure them we'll do our best to make sure things don't happen like that again. But you know, you can't legislate for false tickets, for bad behaviour, and if it's true what they say about the toilets and so forth, you know, toilets not being open, if that's what happened, and as I say, we're waiting to find out. But that sort of, you know, sort of cause it does take a little bit away from it. But it was a great night's boxing. If you're a fight fan, it was good fights. It was really well received. I mean, the take up on BoxNation was fabulous. You know, really put BoxNation.
Would have been one of your best months at BoxNation?
It's our best month this year, and puts us into profit.
Oh, that's good news.
That's really where we've been working to do, and we've hit all our targets, so we're all delighted about that. And as I keep saying, we've got some serious announcements to make in January, and I think that's going to be good for the boxing fans. What we as BoxNation and what we're trying to put together, I think will take us onto another level.
Your first show back after the new year, will that be in February?
Yeah, we may run something at the end of January. There'll be a smaller one in February, and then there'll be the big one. You know, of course we've got to give the subscribers some fights. So there'll be, but the real big ones will be from us will be at the end of February. But there'll be probably a couple of your calls or something like that beforehand. Well, it will be.
And your son and Dennis Hobson have a show in Sheffield next week.
Yeah, and Crawford won the weekend.
Yes.
And he's going to vacate the title. So that fight will probably be a final eliminator for the winner to fight Diaz for the vacant title. So that's a
major incentive for Flanagan and Orban to
grab
that.
And I've got to say, that's a great fight.
Yeah.
That is a great fight. That is a great fight. And I'm looking forward to that one.
Certainly. Well, unless you have any other news, Frank.
Well, I say no news is good news. So
always in boxing, I think people like to hear the news. But
no, as I say, we've got some good things. We've got a press conference on Monday, so we'll be announcing the card next Monday for the 28th and our card for March.
You've got a press conference next Monday?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, Frank Warren, thanks for talking to IFL TV. I will just add though, do you know, like, obviously when you announce this card, it's worth pointing out that everything you announced on the card happened on the card, didn't it? I mean, it was important not to jinx it and like beforehand, but it did happen.
True, yeah, it did happen. It was tough, and there was a lot of people who didn't want it to happen, and were putting out false messages. I mean, Eddie Hearn tweeted to somebody that the fight was off, and we're dealing with that. I don't know why they do it. Why they get involved in that? Why do you want to go down that road and say things like that? It just seems like it's pathetic. I mean, you do your business, we'll do ours, and let us get on with our business, and you know, why even go there? I mean, I don't understand that. And it's like they take great delight in shows being cancelled. Deep down, it's not good for boxing. What's good for boxing is the fights to take place, that our sport gets the back pages of newspapers, gets people interested in the sport, and keeps it alive. That's the most important thing for us, because if we're doing well, they're going to be doing well. You know, if BoxNation would folded or we folded, then I'm telling you now, Sky in a heartbeat would be cutting back like you can't believe, because I've been there. Remember, I've been doing this a long time, and that's what would happen. What we always say is, you know, deliver to, you know, give the fans what they want, give the public what they want. We're putting the fights together. We put a good card together, and we worked hard at keeping it together. You know, there was a lot of negativity out there, and there was, you know, and let's get it right. Chris Eubank Senior was a pain in the backside at a few press conferences by not attending. But in spite of all that, you know, I was determined, and our team were determined to deliver the fans the events that we set out to deliver. And you know, barring an injury, and there weren't any injuries, thank God. That's what we did.
Just finally, Frank, do you think we'll ever be in a boxing world where all the top promoters all work together in every way?
They do it. You know, the business. When you got, if there's a purse bid, you got no choice.
Yeah, but that's because you're forced into that position.
But that's what happens. I mean, you know, let's talk about things. Let's talk about something in general. Do you ever think you're going to get an ideal world where ITV and BBC are going to work together? Do you think that Virgin is ever going to work with British Airways? It's business. At the end of the day, and you know, whether you want to hear it or not, that's how it is. I mean, Richard Branson took BA to court because BA were trying to knock him out of business. You know, Sky TV had some problems with Setanta, didn't they? They were trying to knock Setanta out of the game. Now they've got BT. Do you think Sky and BT are going to hold hands? Of course they're not. They're running a business, and you know, but I've made offers to the other side for their fighters, and I'll do that continuously. Do that if I think, especially if I think my guy can win their fights, I'm going to try and make, and that goes without saying. Keep throwing the ball against the wall, and one day it bounces back, and you might get, you know, we get lucky with one of them. But other than that, you know, if they're fights where, you know, one of us has got a champion and the other one's got the mandatory, and we can't agree terms, then obviously purse offers deal with it very quickly.
There's a view that ideally you wouldn't want your fighters to fight on Sky, and Eddie wouldn't want his fighters to fight on BoxNation.
My fighters have fought on Sky.
Yeah.
We've put them in, what do you call that thing?
Prize
fighter. My fighters have fought on Sky. No one can say they haven't done it. Their fighters haven't.
What about your best fighters?
Well, let's just get it right. I've never gone on record saying my boxers will never fight on BoxNation. I've never said that.
On Sky?
On Sky, no, I'm saying that's what Eddie Hearn said. Categorically said that none of his fighters will ever box on BoxNation. He's gone on record as saying that. I'm not saying I wouldn't have my fighters fight on Sky. Of course I'm saying, but you know, but we put a lot of investment, a lot of time into building the situation, and I'm certainly not in the business. I'm not going to become like I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm not going to become a feeder club like to giving Arsenal players to Manchester City. Of course we're not doing that. You know, we're trying to do it, and the fighters should go where the money is. You know, where they get the money. I mean, you know, our guys got well paid the other night. They get well paid, our fighters. I mean, well paid, and you know, you wouldn't want to see someone get their pay package mixed up with some of the guys from the other side, because they'd certainly be shocked.
All right, well listen, Frank, thanks for talking to IFL TV, and like I said, we'll await news as changing game every day. So
yeah, but it's good. I mean, it's been a great year for boxing, hasn't it? I mean, you know, you step back and look at it, and you look at the shows, a couple of shows we put together, some of the shows that have been on Sky, some of the shows that have been on Channel 5. There's been some good boxing, and look at the overseas stuff. I mean, boxing is thriving. You know, sell-out arenas. It's really doing well, and that's a credit to everybody in the sport, that we're all pushing and working, and that's what competition's all about. Making it good for the fans, that they get it. And I think BoxNation, for a boxing fan, has been a revelation. I mean, you look at what they've had this year, the best from around the world. I mean, fabulous fights, some great fights from here, and some fabulous fights from abroad. So it's you know, it's been a good 2014, and as I say, we've got the Orman and Flanagan fight on the 13th, which is another good fight, and Tim Bradley and so forth. Andy Lee's fight on the 13th as well. You know, we've got a really, you know, some good fights leading up to the end of the year, and I think next year will be even better now. I think next year's going to be really exciting.
Certainly hope so. All right, Mr. Warren, thanks for talking to IFL TV, and we'll catch up with you well before the year's out.
Cheers, Mr.
All right, thank you very much.
Be good.
The Big Fight, sponsored by 666bet.com.